welcome, welcome. Today we have Trong, and you have to teach me how to say your last name.
When?
Quinn.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Troy and I met in the Tony Robbins world. We met on a Facebook group actually in the Tony Robbins groups, and then we started just talking to each other, and then we ended up being a mastermind together, and then we met in person at one of the Tony's events, and then now we became really close friends, just on the very similar kind of mindset and wavelength kind of friendship. And he's been a huge support into helping me grow to where I am in my real estate business as well, and in my own mindset and my own growth journey too. So, welcome so much. Thank you for joining us today, Trong.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Yeah. So the reason I invited Trong today is really to hear his unique experience of how he was in his 9 to 5 job, and then he also went on to start his own business, and then now he also went on to work with another company as well. So really just want to hear your journey, Trong, from your unique perspective, so that we can share with our audience kind of what it's like on the other side. So if you want to start off with Trong, kind of tell us about yourself and what you did before and then what you do now.
Well, how far do you want to go back? I'm an engineer, mechanical engineering by formal education, first engineering job straight out of school. I knew right away that I didn't see myself forever being an employee, and I always had an entrepreneurial mindset. When even in high school or college, I always had some little side hustles, just trying to make money, right? Always trying to make a little bit of hustle on the side, make a little bit of money whenever I have some free time. And mainly, honestly, born out of necessity because I grew up really poor. And I was always looking to make a little bit of money because we never seemed to have enough, right? And so for me, it's just always like, okay, how can I make a buck? So I was always thinking about that. And it's kind of built into my DNA. And so when I first got my after college job sitting at my desk, I was like, I don't see this as my calling forever and ever. I was good at it, but within 2 years of working as a engineer, I found a new hobby of photography. And just like most photographers, I would imagine they shoot enough, then people start saying, "Hey, shoot pictures for me." One thing leads to another. Next thing I know, I am shooting weddings. And so I decided to actually make a business out of it. And then I started shooting, honestly, up to about 30 to 35 weddings a year. And here's the crazy part: I was making more money in my photography business. I was making like 135,000 a year shooting weddings as a side hustle from a job I was making like maybe 75 a year in engineering, and I still didn't quit my engineering job. I don't know why. Honestly, part of it was the fear, the steady of the income, even though I was making pretty consistent money at my engineering job. Part of it was the golden handcuffs, right? The security of a steady paycheck, health benefits, matching 401k. And then honestly, the biggest thing was, I think, in Asian cultures, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is that, their parents have a certain pride of telling their friends what your kids do as a profession, right? Oh, my kid's an engineer, my kid's a doctor, my kid's an attorney, right? Or whatever it is. And so, kind of joking about that in Asian cultures, so there's kind of like four acceptable professions. It's like a doctor, lawyer, engineer, accountant, right? And so part of me, I didn't want to disappoint my mom. And I think it was probably something that I really kind of more personal to my level, because my mom never really pressured me into don't ever quit your engineering job. But there was a really baked in mentality the day that I did decide to say, hey, I'm leaving my engineering job in the end of 2009, and I was doing so well in my photography business that I decided, finally, this is not like a major amazing story, because I didn't go work for 2 years, go start my photography business, and then next year I quit my job, and it was like 8 years later. So this is not like the best, oh my god, I decided to quit and then just burn the boats and then just go. I built a long runway. I built a really strong business. I learned a lot about it, lost a lot of money, made a lot of money, but it built me a really solid foundation to take that step to the next phase, right? And I remember when I told my mom, I gave her my 2 weeks notice that I was going to be quitting my engineering job. And my last day of work was the last day of 2009. So it was kind of like symbolic last work day. And if you guys remember, the last day of 2009 was still in the middle of this financial crisis. So everybody and their grandma was losing their job. And here I am quitting a job that everybody was just barely holding on to. And I'm quitting. My mom's just like, son, what are you doing? Are you crazy? It's that mentality, right? It's that mentality that you hold on to, that steady income, the reliable income that you can depend on, and so that steady paycheck, which is honestly the hardest part when you go out on your own, is you don't get paid regularly. Sometimes you don't get paid for a while as your own business owner, and some businesses, they don't make it. And so you do have to go back sometimes. So that was my journey in terms of quitting the 9 to 5 the first time. As Suzanne alluded to, I've actually gone back and forth several times because there are ventures where it just didn't quite work out. And then I ended up needing some time to kind of reset, figure out what I want to do next. And so right after I quit my engineering job and did photography, I did real estate, and I did that for about 3 to 4 years until a job offer from a former boss that was kind of starting a different company. He made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I was like, okay, I'll start that. And I ended up doing that for another 2, 3 years. And in that time, I met a guy that was building his first Smoothie King franchise. And in doing so, I was very curious because I was a business owner at that point as well, still doing real estate investing. And I stayed in touch with him. And then about a year later, he offered me a opportunity to buy half his store, to be basically business partners with him. And then I bought into that. And then a year later, we opened our second store. And I was doing this actually still while working a full time job, and I was working for Shell. And so the one thing that people don't take into account how valuable it is that your full-time job is a great way to get loans because you actually have a steady income that allows you much more favorable rates, as well as a less risky to the banks, right? Because if you have a full-time paycheck all the time and you start a business, the banks are much more likely to lend you the money, which is obviously counterintuitive and not something that people don't think about when they're just like, I need to just quit this and then go do this. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Don't necessarily jump ship yet. Use the advantages of having a steady paycheck to get the loans for the real estate and get the loans for building out your Smoothie King and things like that. And that allowed me a lot of leverage and a lot of runway, so that when, I mean, just like any business, when you start out the first couple of months, you're not making money, right? And so if anything, you're feeding a lot of money into the business. So having a steady paycheck, pretty freaking good idea. And so we built out our Smoothie King, and the way that we had built it, we had a manager because we've already run one full store that both of us actually had full-time jobs when we were running it, but we built a manager, and we enabled her, empowered her enough so that we're not having to deal with the day-to-day operations. And that is really truly having a business, right? You're not trading time for money, you're trading other people's time for money. And if you do it well enough, I mean, he and I maybe spent 3 hours a week on that business. That's on the weekends, and that's not even during the week. So we can have our own full time job, which I was enjoying at the time. He had his own job. He's a professor. He teaches. And so he teaches them maybe 5, 10 hours a week. But we had this passive income stream coming in because we built these businesses, we set it up right, and we had relatively minimum oversight every single day, and still was able to run it and be very profitable. And so we held on to it till 2022 when I liquidated both of them. But it's a great way to build a lot of passive income, to build net worth. So what I'm doing now is I am working with a startup company right now, building this company. I'm literally employee number one. So we are fresh, and we are building home kits, which allow us to assemble small modular ADU units, or additional dwelling units for the people not familiar with that, and building backyard studios, mother-in-law suites, whatever you want to call she sheds, anywhere from like 100 square feet to 5, 6, 700 square feet. And then we're also working on building full houses using the system. And so for me, technically I'm an employee. I do have equity in the business, but I get the benefits actually of a steady paycheck, but also the huge upside of being a startup where there could be huge upside on the back end. We just went through another round of funding where we raised about 5 million on this business. So we have quite a big future ahead of us in terms of what we're on to do. As true to my nature, I still have a side business. You can't just not hustle, right? And so I am a business coach as well, helping other entrepreneurs build their business doing what exactly what I'm doing it as a side hustle, building, businesses that maybe they're already full time doing it, but maybe they're struggling. So that's the long and short of it.
I'm so excited to hear. I didn't even know there were so many side hustles, cycles of side hustles happening
Oh,
that
I,
way.
I left out
And
like a 10-year period here. I wanted to finish quickly. I still have the real estate investing and real estate portfolio as well as real estate investing business that I did too. So I
right.
was trying to keep it like not 35 minutes. But I've done a lot.
But I love that story because it brings such a unique perspective. It's like often we hear about like not leave your 9 to 5 and go into the business, but you approach it in such a way that they were both happening together basically and on repetitive on many circumstances that happened that way. And so I want to dive a little more. And you can choose whichever period you want to talk about, but how did you get the courage to start that side hustle, right? As a business that you have been in many business industries in photography and in restaurants. And so how did you get that courage to start that first hustle? And or maybe we should start with
Okay.
this question first.
Hey.
How did you just hear this, let yourself listen to that nudge? It's like, huh, maybe I wanna work on that.
So I guess this is a blessing and a curse. I have always been like intensely curious. I am a recovering perfectionist, so I will admit to that. I need to learn, as I preach to my clients, done is better than perfect, and sometimes I need to embody that myself. So I'm I'm just as guilty of it sometimes, but I'm just intensely curious. And so when I find something that is really interesting, I usually dive in and just go for it. You know what? The one thing that really drives me, honestly, is that we grew up so poor. We're immigrant family. We immigrated from Vietnam to America, and growing up poor, the driving force is like my mom has always worked forever and ever, and she literally just retired like a year ago, and she's like almost 70, right? And just doesn't have anything to fall back on. It's like depending on her kids to take care of her. And the driving force for that is just seeing that. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want to make my mom's sacrifices for all these years really worth it so that I can set her up for retirement, but also build a legacy for my family and my kids and my future grandkids and never have that moments where you're like, holy shit, are we going to eat today? Are we going to have a roof overhead? Because we got evicted like several times growing up, and it's just that it burns that into your soul and you say you never want to feel that way again, right? And so for me, the one misconception I think people have that they hold on to when they are holding on to their job is that this false sense of security. As you guys probably all experienced during the pandemic, nothing is that secure. Could have imagined that a freaking global pandemic would shut down half the world for almost 2 years? Companies went out of business because it just didn't even make sense for that business when they can't get customers to walk in the door. Nothing's truly that secure, and they think it's safe. But the one thing that you kind of have to realize is you have to adapt, and that adaptation could mean having multiple skill sets that can get you employable or make you employable to different people, but also make you valuable in the marketplace. Because if you have a skill of any kind, whether it's engineering, a doctor, or even an accountant, or marketing, or whatever, if you have a skill that's valuable in the marketplace, you will be able to make a living, whether that's working for yourself or working for somebody else. But I think people, if they just rely on one skill only and then that skill isn't needed and it becomes obsolete with things like AI or whatever, you don't have a backup plan. So you kind of have to think about it in that respect. So for me, it was always about what new skill can I learn to be able to make myself more valuable in the marketplace. And the more value you can bring to the marketplace, the more you get paid. I mean, that's just what it is. And when you take it the first level, you mean you could bring that to an employer, right? You can bring value to employer, you get a good job, and you do it well enough, you get paid more. That's just economics, right? That's just capitalism. But if you take it to the next level, you earn some more skills where you learn how to get customers, you know how to do sales, you know how to do marketing on top of that one special skills, whether it's photography or finding real estate deals. Then you become immensely more valuable and you become your boss. And then you have the ability to dictate how much or how little you make. And to me, that was always a driving force, is being able to have control of my destiny. And I know that As valuable as I think I am to my startup company, I'm employee number 1 or 2. Like, could we have a falling out with the owner and I could lose my job tomorrow? Absolutely. It's a startup. Startups fail like 89% of the time. So the odds are against me. And that's why I'm always making sure that if somebody, as I use to quote, there's a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And it's not necessarily about having a backup plan, but to me, I always think about an analogy. It's kind of like, if you know what, if you work for somebody else, you are riding somebody else's airplane. And to me, right now, as fulfilling as this role is, I know for a fact that I am building somebody else's dream. It's the founder's dream to make the startup, to fulfill his entrepreneurial vision of what he wants. And I'm helping in that. I'm having a hell of a good time, and it's fun and it's challenging and I'm getting paid well for it. But I do know it's his airplane and I'm building his airplane. At any point in time, I could get kicked out the door, right? And for a lot of people, they don't have a backup plan, whether it's real estate assets that could save their butt when they don't have money coming in, or it's a second passive income stream, or even a second business of some kind that gives them the ability to earn money. Because if you got fired today, it'll probably take you 2 to 3 months to come up with a business idea and then start making money. So it's quite a long runway. So for me, it's kind of like, why wait until somebody kicks you out of the plane to start building your parachute, right? It's like you kind of want to do it ahead of time. And if you build it well enough, it might turn into an airplane, not just a parachute. And that's my goal, is to make sure that I am always working on my own airplane. And the beautiful thing about having a job is that it gives you that extra runway where you're not like, holy crap, I'm not making any money right now. And so you do at things out of desperation, and it's hard to be creative, right? It's hard to be creative when you got a gun on your head. You're like, you better help make some money quick, or you're not paying rent, or you're gonna get evicted, or you're gonna move back with your parents, or whatever your terrible thing. That's just a gut instinct to me. I do that. It's not a choice, even. Like, I don't know if I consciously make a choice not to do that. It's just I don't want to be at anybody else's mercy, because
Yeah.
that's kind of scary,
And that's
you know.
beautiful how
So
you said it. You're right. And the risk of having a job is you're at the mercy of somebody and they have full control over your destiny, whether you're staying or not. And so, how did you, throughout all these different adventures of yours, allow yourself to listen to that curiosity? Say, hey, I'm interested in photography. Hey, I'm interested in the restaurant business. They're all so different. How did you allow yourself to do that and embark on these all different industries?
you know what? So for me, I'm a voracious reader. So I read a lot and I'm intensely curious, like I said before. And so what even got me into the photography business altogether was, the only reason I even fell into photography was that my friend gave me a camera. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm leaving college now and I want to chase this passion that I've been wanting and I've never had money to buy cameras. No, it's like someone gave me a camera. I'm like, what is this thing? This is halfway interesting. And then I started taking pictures, like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then I started developing my own film. So it was just passion for just curiosity. And it wasn't a passion at that point. It was just like, oh, it's fun to take black and white pictures. That was it. But I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is probably like one of those foundational books. And then I also read The 4 Hour Work Week, which was pivotal in just changing the paradigm of my mind. And so when I decided to close down the photography business after like 10 years, the big reason why I did that was I read this book called The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. And in that book, to summarize it super quickly, the main premise of the book is that there are 4 ways you earn money. Okay. One of them is the E quadrant, as they call it, is you're earning as an employee, you're trading time for money. The second one is S, which is the self-employed one, which you have more control of your time, but you're essentially still trading time for money. So think of like photographer, like me. If I'm not shooting, I'm not making money, right? And I was a purely a wedding specialist. So if I'm not shooting a wedding on a Saturday, Trung's not making money. And so yes, you do have doctors and lawyers and attorneys are basically like that. They just get a lot more per hour, but they essentially are trading time for money, right? Because when they see patients, they're earning money, but if they take a week vacation, they're not billing. And so they don't make money. So for me, that light bulb moment came on, is that if I wanted to go make, say, $500,000 a year, I'd have to shoot a shit ton of weddings. Like, that's a lot of freaking weddings I'd have to shoot. And I was like, I don't want to shoot that many weddings. First of all, that sounds awful. And there is a limit because I'm still trading time for money. That's what I realized. There is a cap to that because I don't want to waste all 52 weekends in the year shooting weddings, and my girlfriend would kill me, and then I would never be able to go on vacation because literally you'd have to go on vacation from Monday through Wednesday only, or Thursday. So that was a huge revelation for me. And then I also realized in order for me to scale, I had to trade other people's time for money. So it goes into the other two quadrant, which is investor, which is your money making money, like you say, buying real estate, like you're doing, like, buying a rental property or investing in the stock market. When you're sleeping, the money's making money. And the fourth one, which is what I really wanted, was the B, which was the business, which is trading time, other people's time for my money, just like a Smoothie King is. And so when I shut down the photography business, I ended up going back to working for somebody else because I didn't really know what my next step was. And so the message here for most people is, what is truly your guiding light? And leaving your job is not a one-way street, it's a two-way door. If you have the skills in the marketplace, you can take the leap of faith for yourself, quit the job, go do it, whatever you do. Obviously, build your runway first before you go and jump off the cliff, right? You want to make sure the plane's moving and you have something that's making you money before you ever jump. But when you do, you know what? Sometimes it's a crash and burn, and that's fine. Like, I've crashed and burned many times, and I realized I can always get a job. And that was my thinking. If shit hits the fan, I can get a job. No big deal. I'll do that for a couple years and then go find my next venture. And that's what I did when I started doing the Smoothie King, because I realized my next big step was a B. What type of business can I buy or build? And so when this opportunity came about, I was like, okay, I'm in the right mindset. Hey, this B opportunity came about. I'm ready to pull the trigger. And so that was really the key, is making sure that you have a North Star, something that drives your decision at the higher level, not just, oh, I want to go do a stenciling business. I want to do calligraphy this week. And then next week, I'm going to go buy a car wash. And then the next week, I'm going to go buy real estate. When people do that, they don't really have a North Star of what they're trying to accomplish. There's no longer vision of what they're trying to do. It's just like, oh, hey, the next shiny object that makes me curious, I'm going to go do that. You see the difference in that, though? Like,
Yeah.
that's the key for me. Hey, I know I want to be basically a business of some kind, but that's not dependent on me. I didn't want to go build another photography business. And
Yeah.
so for me, that was the guiding light. And so that's why when I go and do a different adventure, it's aligned with the principles that is what I really wanted.
It sounded like the cash flow quadrants, all four squares, were your guiding star. That was your North Star for you to understand what you're striving for. Okay, your next step from an E to an S, that was your next step. Then you had your photography business. Then you had from the S to an I, which is maybe your real estate business, and then from I to a B, then that's what drove you towards the Smoothie King because that allowed you to get to the B, right? And you mentioned a lot of this concept a few times already, but your value in the marketplace, right? Throughout all these different steps in the cash flow quadrant and then all these different positions with different companies, different businesses, how did you think you were, or if you can first qualify, define what that market and the value place means, and how did you gather those values so that you can always step up to the next level for yourself?
Great question. I failed my way to success. I mean, honestly, in my photography business, like, to become a successful entrepreneur, to me, it's like building a bridge that's out of brick. And let's just say there are 10 bricks that you need to lay across to build a full bridge. And those bricks could be communication, it could be risk tolerance, it could be marketing, sales, influence, a skill of influence, which is very big, understanding numbers, being able to market, being able to be halfway decent on social media, whatever, right? So there's 10 skills that really could make you a competent entrepreneur, we'll just call it that. So every business that you do, you are checking off one or two more boxes. It's like you paying ignorance tax. Basically, until you learn all these skills, you're gonna fail your way until you learn it. You're gonna keep doing it. You're gonna learn. You're gonna fail. You're gonna be like, oh shit, I don't know how to do marketing. My business isn't doing great. It died. And now the next time I build a business, I know that I need to build the marketing skills because that's why my first business failed because I didn't market enough. And then you learn those skills. And every time you do something, you are checking off, are you building that skill set until a certain level of competence? And why I see most business owners fail is that they lack one of the core competencies of running a business. They could be really amazing photographers, but they can't sell. They're just scared of asking for money because whatever reason, they're like, I don't feel right asking for money. Well, then you're going to be a starving artist. I mean, you need to learn that skill. That's just what it is. And if you're like, oh, I don't really like, telling people about my product. I'm like, well, if you can't market it, people don't know about your product, they can't buy it. You can't have it both ways. You can't have to want to own a business and can't tell people about your product, right? And so every way is learning the skills. And so for me, I learned a lot of skills over 10 years in the photography business. I learned how to sit with clients. I learned how to package things together to that it is a profitable product for my company. When I first started, it's kind of like, oh, an 8 by 10 was, I'll sell it for like $20. I'm like, oh my God, because it only cost me $1.50 to print it, right? From my Pro Lab. And my friend was just like, you're going to go broke really quickly. And I was like, what do you mean? I only paid $1.50 for this. And I'm making $20. It's like a $18 profit. He's like, you haven't accounted for your time. You haven't accounted for the artistry you put into it. And then I'm just like, oh shit. Like, it's not profitable. Like, if I had somebody else do it, I'd be losing $20, $50 every time I took a picture. And so learning that skill, learning how to price it properly, learning how to market, learning how to give an amazing client experience. Those are all skills that you need to learn. And so until you learn them, your business or whatever it is going to lack certain skills. There's a couple ways to do it. You can read and you can implement, you can learn from other people's mistakes, or you can learn it yourself. That's basically two ways. And so that's why coaches are very important. It's kind of like, hey, I made other mistakes. You shouldn't have to do that. Let me help you. Let me save 10 years. That's why we read books, because people have made those mistakes. They learn how to negotiate. And so you read the book about negotiations and then you learn those skills, or you learn the ideas of those skills and you practice until you get it better, until you get to a certain level of competence. And so for me, I had a mentor in my photography business after 3 to 4 years of just floundering around, just didn't really have a brand. I was just taking pictures and I took a class, and then that instructor really became my mentor. And then I built a really cohesive brand because of that person. And then, like in my Smoothie King business, I had the privilege of being this guy's business partner where he's already had that Smoothie King running for 2 years. And so he's just like, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you freaking run a store. This is how you deal with the employees. This is how you do this. And I'm like, awesome. And so if I was to do it by myself, meaning like I buy the franchise, start the business as the sole proprietor, I would have had to hire my first employees ever, which I'd never hired minimum wage workers ever in my life, or service employees. And so to me, like the fastest way to learn and minimize your mistakes is getting a mentor, getting somebody that a coach, a mentor, or take classes from people that have been there, done that, because that's the fastest way for you to learn, honestly.
And you sounded like you had a lot of mentors along the way, and you relied
I
on
failed a
fake.
lot. Trust me. Even when I had mentors, I still made mistakes because I thought I was smarter than I was. Yeah.
You touched on a really good point. A lot of people, they feel comfortable in their job, and that's why they're this golden handcuffs, basically, and they are fearful of taking that leap to change something so drastic. Maybe that seems to the outside world, it's like, oh, even from your mom, right? It's like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you quitting your job? You're getting paid so well, and everybody's getting fired out there. And so it's, how
It's
did
all fear
you?
based, right? I mean, it's really fear,
It
right?
is.
All fear based. Yeah.
And I certainly had that fear. It's like we had somebody in our office, and he had ventured out to do his own business, and he ended up having to come back to the same office, and people were saying, oh my God, look at him, he failed in his business, that's why he had to come back. And so there's a lot of talk that people cannot see of exactly what had gone through on the outside, but then people do talk. Did
There's a lot
you
of shame.
allow?
It's a lot of
Yeah,
shame.
it is.
And a lot of people go back to a different job because they can't face the people that they left the first time. So that
Mhm.
is a definite thing. Absolutely.
Mhm, yeah.
Yeah.
And for yourself, you must have self-talk about that as well. And so can you tell us a little bit more, how did you yourself overcome that?
Oh, the self-doubt that creeps in on every entrepreneur's
Hmm.
mind, you mean?
Yeah, about what will the others say if I were to fail in my business venture.
You know what? I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't care. And this is not to say that I didn't care about what people think. If anybody tells you that they don't care what people say, they're lying because we're social creatures. We do care. It's just that we care about certain people's opinions more than others. Obviously, my mentor, I care about his opinion much more than a other engineer that looks like they're living the life that I don't want. So to me, that was my perspective all the time because literally the first day of me starting my engineering job, I looked around. There's guys that have been there 40 years. You're just kind of like, dude, that sucks. Like they love what they do. So it's not like I knock on what they do or anything, or people that have been loyal and love doing. Because here's to be honest, like not everybody's cut out to be an employee. Not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay. For vast majority of people, I don't recommend entrepreneurship because a lot of times it's tough. You can attest to it. There are many lonely, freaking scary, dark nights of the soul where you're just like, "What the f am I doing? I'd rather just get a paycheck and know I can actually pay rent." Right? It sucks. I mean, there's things, but the rewards are freaking amazing. But have there been times where I'm like, "What the f am I doing?" Absolutely. Like this one entrepreneur, he is a multi-billionaire, okay? Multi-billionaire. And he still runs his company. He sold it and came back to it because the company that bought it couldn't run it right. He basically bought the company back from them at a discount from what he sold it to them at. So he made a bunch of money, even though he got the company back exactly the way he wanted. But somebody was interviewing him and they said, "Do you have the thoughts about questioning about whether you're doing the right thing, right? Are you like questioning what you're, are you should be doing this anymore or whatever, right?" He's like, "You mean this week or today?" Because like every week he's asking that, every day he's asking that, because even though you are very successful, I mean, like, he probably doesn't have to work for 10 lifetimes, right? You got like $10 billion, you're set, and like your fucking family set for the next 10 generations. So you didn't have to work, but you still do it because you love the game, because it's intoxicating as it is rewarding, as it is like punches you in the face a lot, right? But absolutely, I have doubts all the time. And a lot of the anxiety that I feel is because of my business. It really is. Like, if I didn't have a side hustle going on, I'd be pretty chill. But I'd be bored out of my mind very quickly. And that's the key, right? Because, like, what makes you feel alive is when you're feeling anxious, when your heart is racing, is when you're feeling alive. That's when you know you are alive and you're living and you're pushing yourself. Because if you just got everything under control, you're not questioning anything, you're not growing, you're kind of dying. And you know what? When I look at those people that I work next to, and this is a quote from Henry David Thoreau, and it's just like, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And I see that in them. And they all wish they had the ability to go chase their dreams, but yet they don't. And then 10 years, 20 years goes by, and the handcuffs get bigger and bigger as they have kids, and then they have a bigger mortgage, and then they have more cars, and they have more things that they need to support. Quitting gets harder and harder and harder. And that's just the nature of, just as you get older, you have more responsibilities, you have your family and things like that, and it becomes increasingly tough. So when I think about what those guys might say, honestly, I don't care, because they are not living life that I want.
And it's very interesting as you were saying that I got a download of the people who talk about you behind your back. It's like, oh, look at that person, they just came back. It's almost them trying to validate themselves for not leaving and for not following their dreams because they're looking for validation of people who fail. And they're like, oh, look, he fell. Oh, thank goodness I didn't leave. Thank goodness I didn't take that leap of faith because he had to come back, right? But it sounds like it's pointing the finger out, but it's really them themselves trying to validate their own decision for not leaving or their own decision for not following their dreams. Everybody has secret desires, right? And when I think of it that way, okay, well, what they say is never about you. It's just themselves pretty much talking to themselves even though on the outside it seems like it's talking about the other person. And so that made me feel secure. It's like, okay, as a business owner, they haven't experienced what is it on the other side, and all the anxiety and all the sleepless nights, and all the what the F am I doing with my life, right? And thinking back to the story of my colleague who came back to the same office, it's like, I'm sure he's learned a lot about himself and his own potential having gone outside and having left his job. And so I feel like he's gained a lot more than the people who stayed behind in the office.
I 100% agree. And here's one of the things that I always kind of look back on is people that are internet trolls, right? Like people that just kind of always haters or criticize people. And somebody said, it's never the people that are above you that are criticizing you. They're fucking successful and working on their own lives. It's only the people below you that are the ones that are critics, right?
That's true.
And she's famous for quoting the Theodore Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena speech. And I'm not going to try to quote it, I'll totally butcher it. But the whole point she says is like, it's not the man who that criticizes the guy that has fallen. It is the person in the blood, sweat, and tears in the arena that are fighting that I really admire, basically. And what her takeaway from that quote, which apparently changed her life, she said, if you're not in the freaking arena getting your ass handed to you day in, day out, I don't care about your opinion. You can have it. I appreciate you. You can have it, but your opinion doesn't matter to me because you don't know what it's like. And frankly, I don't care about what you think because you're not in it getting your butt kicked. You don't know what it's like. And so to me, to really answer your question, I don't, I don't care. I got to sleep with me every night.
Yeah, yeah,
And if
that's
I
so
knew that
true.
I gave it my all and I did something that the majority of the people wouldn't do, and I put myself out there, and maybe I landed on my face multiple times over and over again, lost a shit ton of money, but you know what? It was hella worth the ride, and will do it 10 times again. And that's the kind of attitude you kind of have to have, honestly. You kind of have to grow a thicker skin because if you don't, you're not going to last as an entrepreneur. It's kind of like the one of the few places in the world where you are rewarded for failure because you tried. Whereas people with employee mentalities, you fail too many times, you're going to get fired, right? You're not rewarded for trying and growing and things like that. You are rewarded for doing the same thing, exactly what you're hired for, and just doing it well all the time. That's it. So it's a complete 180 in thinking. And so that's why, for a lot of people, when they leave their employee mentality and they bring it into their next adventure of entrepreneurship, they don't make decisions that could really grow the business because they do it out of fear because they're like, what if I fail? Oh, you're gonna fail. It's just whether you're gonna get your ass back up. But you have to accept that and you have to be okay with that. And when you come from a world where you're not rewarded for failure, it's hard to do. It's a mind shift you got to make. And that's what I don't think a lot of people realize.
Thank you so much for that heartfelt share. And I always end my podcast with asking all my guests the same question. For somebody who has that nudge, is like, hey, I feel like I want to step up. I have that nudge, but I'm scared to take that step. What is your one recommendation to them?
You know what? You have one life to live. I'd say just kind of like in Dead Poet Society, you got to like just savor the marrow of life and really go after what really drives you, what makes you excited to get up every day. And as cliche as that sounds, if you are not growing, you're not pushing yourself to do something that you thought was scary. It's easy because comfort is easy, right? Doing the comfortable thing. And that's what unfortunately a lot of people get sucked into. It's just a very comfortable life. They're making their payments, they buy what they want, things like that, but they're truly not happy. At least that's what drives me. And so, like, if you're gonna do it, go ahead, try it. And think about this way: you have the time. If you're doing it as a side hustle, go build the business to the point where you get consistency and amount of revenue where you can think that, hey, after I get 3 months of consistent revenue that I can pay my bills with, things like that. And if I dedicate, instead of just say 10 or 15 hours a week, and dedicate 40, I can see the business doubling or tripling pretty easily. Then that is probably a good time for you to be able to exit your job and then be able to transition and actually make more money. I think the big mistake with a lot of people that really scares people is that it's usually they think like, if I start a side business, then I need to quit my job. It's not really binary. It's not like on or off. It's a continuum. And so you can have both for quite a long time, and as I have, And so you can leverage the time that you have earning a full-time job. And in that 1 or 2 years where you're doing both, it's going to be a season of where you're working a lot. And you kind of have to understand that, because it takes a lot of effort to go build a business. And you have to make sacrifices in doing so, because if you don't, there's only so many hours in the day. You can't go and expect to go do all your sports, go hang out with all your friends every evening and go in happy hour and then try to build a business. You can't do all of that. So you have to pick, because every choice you make, you have to sacrifice something. You have to sacrifice personal time, free time, your binge watching of Game of Thrones. I don't know what people watch these days, but that's the key. It's kind of like, hey, if you're willing to bust your butt for like 1 or 2 years to really build your business while you're working a full-time job, you could very potentially set yourself up for the next 10 to 15, 20, 30, 50 years of your life into an amazing business, where after 2 years of, doing double duty, you can actually quit and then go back to your 40 and be so much more fulfilled. So the question for you is, do you want to stay in the comfort or go for extraordinary, and make the sacrifices now so that you're living the life that they can't do later? And to me, like, that's how I think about things. And so, yeah, so I hope that helps.
I love that. I love that. Go for the extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
Trong, can you tell us a little bit more about your coaching business and what you do now, and how do we find you if somebody were interested to look you up?
Well, I am mainly on Facebook. I'm dating myself as either a Gen Xer or older, because apparently everybody else is on Instagram. But you can find me Trung Huynh on Facebook. I post content daily, and I have a following in my same name in YouTube, and I will be adding content to that more regularly coming up here in the near future. And so, yeah, that's how I am. And I'm a business coach. So if you're looking to build your franchise business, or if you have a side hustle that you really want to grow and you're struggling with it, and yeah, reach out to me and we can talk. That's it.
Yeah. And definitely reach out to him because, as you've heard, Trung has been on this path himself already. So he can definitely guide you on anything that's coming up, emotionally, the scary stuff, technically on the business stuff. And he is a very, very good friend and resource of mine to help me in my own business as well. So definitely reach out to Trung.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
All
And
right. I'll
everybody,
talk to you
have a
soon.
good
Thanks.
day. Talk
All
to
right.
you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.